have to be in that position where I didn't have a choice but to actually say, you know what, this is what's going on. This is how it has to be because right now I am your elder. I'm the one in charge. It was extremely difficult. And so that happened. That went on for about 2 years, where I was from like 17 to like 19, where I was always home. I didn't really have a lot of friends that I would go out to hang out with because I was always taking care of my brother and sister. And then by the grace of God, my mom and dad actually got back together a couple years later, and they're still together. They're doing really well. They live down the street, well, no, that way, and they're doing really well. And so they decided to move back here to California from Georgia, where we all lived in, because my dad got a really good job. So it made sense to everybody come back here. They have family over here, whatever. But I was going to college, and I had a lot of things going on. So I was like, I'm going to stay back for a little while. I got my own place. That's fine. I'm just going to hang out here, and I've got family too, so it's not a big deal. And at that point, Aaron was still living across the street. Everybody else had left, and I was living in an apartment like 5 minutes from where I used to live. And then I was still leading worship at my church for the youth group. I was still doing all that stuff, but then I got an opportunity to be in a band as a front runner for a band. And I took the opportunity because it paid more money than the job that I had at the moment. So I was like, this is cool and this will be fun. It was already a pretty well established band, so I picked it up as a front runner, and I was lead singer, and it kind of had that stage mentality. Like I said, I was holding the guitar, so I was automatically the loud one, and everybody kind of knew who I was, so it kind of just fit. And we did the East Coast tour. We did a tour, we went all around, and that was kind of the part where I kind of let the lack of responsibility be part of my personality. I didn't care about anything because I didn't have to anymore because my family was gone. So I would drink all night, wake up the next morning and go to work, drink the next night, and then go to church the next morning and lead worship for these kids. So I was, I guess the best way to put it was I was kind of living a lie. I would wake up on Sunday morning and it would be Christian man until 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I had a gig to go set up for. So it was kind of went from I was living 2 separate lives, and it took a lot of me to not let those cross, and that's extremely difficult to talk about because I really feel like since I know that this is my calling, this little guy right here is where I belong. That doing both of those things at the same time, I know that I have a lot of forgiveness that I'm owed to pay back. So I did that for about a year or so. Had a job at a restaurant, serving whatever, easy hours, didn't matter. I was making good money, so I didn't care. And then I got a call at about 4 o'clock in the morning that I needed to go to the hospital, and they wouldn't tell me what it was for. They just told me I needed to go to the hospital. And so I got there, and a bunch of my friends were there, and some of my friends from church, some of my friends from just high school in general, and they said. One of my close friends, Jamie, they said he committed suicide because his dad left, and he couldn't handle it anymore, so he overdosed on drugs, just because he didn't, I guess he just couldn't handle the pressures of being here anymore. So he just decided to kind of, I guess, just let it go. It didn't matter anymore, his life didn't matter. And that was tough because he, growing up with somebody and then immediately, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're gone, and not from an accident. They died. They killed themselves because they just couldn't cope. I didn't understand, what I could have done differently, or how I could have, helped them out, or what I could have done to stop them from doing, whatever it is that they did. And it was extremely painful, and it still kind of hurts to talk about, just because there was nothing that I could have done, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing that I could have done. I always think back about what if I had called him that night and asked him if he wanted to come hang out. What if I had been the one to go hang out with him that day instead of the guy who went to go get drugs with him? There's always what ifs that you're gonna hear, and it's really difficult because I know it's not my fault, but at the same time, if something would have been different, then he might have still been here. So it was really difficult. And then and then about a year later, like I said, I'm bouncing back and forth, so I hope you guys can stay with me. And about a year later, I found out about this, I guess you can call it a movement or a program or whatever you want to call it. I can't think of the correct word for it. It's called To Write Love on Our Arms. Does anybody know what that is, what To Write Love on Our Arms is? Anybody? Yeah? Okay. Basically, I'll let you guys know. I'm a really big advocate of this particular. I can't really call it a charity. It's more like a movement or like a rescue mission kind of thing. This guy had a friend of his, and he felt that something was wrong, and he knew that she was in a really dark place in her life, and so he decided to go to her house one night. And when he got there, he found her laying on the floor, covered in blood, because she had taken a razor blade and carved just hate and horrible things into her arms because she couldn't cope. She couldn't live with it anymore. She couldn't deal. And so, obviously, the first thing that they did was they picked her up and took her to the hospital. And the hospital actually would not take her because she had fresh razor wounds and cutting wounds, and they thought that she was a risk for suicide. So they wouldn't take her. They said, no, we can't have a risk for suicide. I don't, whatever insurance policy or whatever it was. So they wouldn't take her. They sent her away. I know this is hard to believe, but it's 100% true. And so, what they found out was that I guess when she came to coherent, where she could actually breathe and talk a little bit, that she was on like 4 or 5 different kinds of drugs, cocaine, PCP, alcohol, like you name it, she was on it, and she had tried to kill herself because she just didn't matter anymore. She didn't care. And so what they did was some of his friends took her home, and they just sat with her for 5 days straight. They didn't leave her. No one left her. And they just sat there and they prayed for her and they prayed over her. And they talked to her and they talked her through it. And at this point, she's been alive for 3 or 4 years now. She's doing really well. She's actually on doing a college speaking tour right now. Actually talking about the ups and downs of life and the risks of suicide and that kind of thing. And it really spoke to me because it's like they did something about it. They did something that they could have. There was something that he did to help her and save her life, because if he hadn't been there, she would have died. And so I encourage everybody to go home and go to tryloveonourarms.com or Twoloha, it's TWOLA or something like that. Whatever. Try Love on Our Arms, the initials. It's a website, and there's a lot of information on it. You guys can buy T-shirts and bracelets and all that kind of stuff, and all that stuff goes to online call centers and IM centers where people who are hurting can actually talk to someone anonymously and just be able to share their hurt, and hopefully it would not end the way that Renee could have ended. So I just kind of wanted to let you guys know about that, because it's something that could have helped me if it would have happened a little bit later. Anyway, so that again, I was still pretty strong in my faith. I backslid a little bit with the drinking and the partying, but I knew that God was my Savior. And after Jamie died, I was like, okay, well, you have a purpose for this. You have a reason for him dying, and as sad as this is to see him go, we know that there's a reason for that. So I still held I still held fast, and I was like, I know that I've backslid, but I'm gonna try to get back to where I was. And so I continued to go with the band, but I stopped drinking and I stopped partying, and I continued to lead worship, and things were going really good. And then Erin and I actually started dating, which was cool, because it was a situation where she already knew everything about me, everything the hair on my back and the mole on the inside of my throat or whatever it is that I might have. She already knew all that. None of that's actually true. I'm just saying in general. She knew all the bad stuff. Like how my farts smell. Like she knew, because she'd been there for almost going on 10 years. And so we started dating, and things were going really well. And I was working and going to school, and then on April 21st, 4 years ago, April will be 4 years. She was driving home from work, and she fell asleep and hit a tree, and she died. And I had actually planned on asking her to marry me. I kind of had an idea about going out in the middle of the woods, because there's a certain spot we like to go to and hang out, that kind of thing. There's this big mud hole, and I plan on asking her to marry me. But the doctor said she never didn't suffer for anything, but she worked on a 12-hour shift, and then she went to like this cancer relay, and then